Hey everybody! In this video we're going to take a look at how to play Entromancy Hacker Battles. At its core, Entromancy Hacker Battles is a 2 to 4 player competitive card game that allows you to take the role of a hacker and try to hack into someone else's security device. We start out Entromancy Hacker Battles by flipping a coin and determining who's going to play first. Or you can choose whoever's younger, whoever's better looking. I don't know. You can choose who gets to play first. And we have these two decks here that symbolize these two different players. I'll be playing both of the players right now. And these are kind of abbreviated decks for our purposes today. They only have 15 unique cards in them. The decks that ship with Entromancy Hacker Battles actually have 30 cards, that basically each of these 15 cards that are duplicated. So 30 cards per deck. Or if you play with the advanced rules, you can create a deck of your own and create your own strategy. So we have these two decks. One is kind of like a cyberpunk Ceridian blue, and the other one's a cyberpunk hot pink or magenta deck that are going to play against each other. And the first thing we're going to do after we choose who plays first, right now the cyberpunk blue person is going to play first, is we're going to choose an objective for the game. And there's 5 different objective cards for the game. The one we're going to choose for this particular video is the one where you want to reach 10 bit points or BP before your opponent. That's the most basic way to play. There are 4 other objective cards that are a bit more complex, so we'll just stick with this one today. I'm going to move that off screen just so it's easier for you to see everything else that's going on. But just remember, we're trying to reach 10 bit points to overcome each other's security protocols and win the day. And once we do that, we'll also choose a hacking specialization. We don't have to look at them in depth right now, but essentially a hacking specialization is something that only you can do in the game and only your opponent can do a different hacking specialization. And these won't make sense right at the beginning of the game, so we're just going to leave them for a little bit later, but just want to show you that you will choose a hacking specialization that will set you apart, because right now in this particular setup, we both have the same cards in our decks. So I'll put those to the side for now, and we'll talk about them later. So I have this deck that presumably has 30 cards in it. Right now it just has 15, and you have this deck which also has 15 cards. We'll also presume that they've been shuffled, so I don't know the order in which I'm going to receive these cards, but it's important to conceptualize that this is a deck that I have, that either I've created or that the game has created for me, that represents the types of cards that I'm able to use in my hacker battle. And in Entromancy Hacker Battles, we call these cards functions. Functions is, if you're familiar with coding or any sort of programming language, you'll know functions to be a prime component of a lot of different programming languages, and each of these cards is represented as a function. When we start playing, both players are going to draw 5 cards from their deck, drawing 5 functions from their deck. And I draw them face down so that my opponent can't see them, but I can see them. So if you were looking at them, they would kind of look like this, and I'll describe what each one of them does. And I'll put them face down here just so my opponent can't see them. And then my opponent's going to draw 5 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 5 functions, I should say. And they get to look at their functions, and they're going to place them face down as well, so that only they can see them. And then we're going to take turns in the main component of a round of Entromancy Hacker Battles. What we just did is called initializing our functions. And to initialize, the initialization step is the first stage of each round of Hacker Battles. So, of which there are 3. There's the initialize, the compile, and the execute phase of Entromancy Hacker Battles. We just did initialize, which means draw 5 functions at random from our deck. And we're going into what's called the compile phase, which means we need to compile a program or create a program that involves each one of these 5 functions that we've drawn. So I'm just going to move these off the board, the decks off the board, so we have a little bit more room to play. And so I have a number of functions in my hand. I'm just going to put them out here so that you can see them, and I'll try to read them upside down so that we both can see them. The first one that I've drawn at random is called double, which will double the amount of BP that you gain at the end of the round. There's a firewall, which prevents one of your opponents, in this case I just have one opponent, from gaining or losing BP this round. The next one is called ping, which means that I will gain 2 bit points and all of my opponents will lose 2 bit points. This one over here is called scrape, which essentially negates any variables that will be played this turn. We'll explain exactly what that means. And the fifth one is called host, which allows me to gain a number of bit points equal to the number of the socket in which this function is played. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. I know a lot of that may not make sense right at the outset, and that's why we read the instruction manual and learn how to play the game or watch this video. So what all these interesting words and things mean are very simple. Each card has a value that is going to be accrued at the end of the turn during the compile step. So we did the initialize step, which means we drew all of the cards for the round, and now we're doing the compile step, which means myself and my opponent are going to play cards one by one or play functions one by one to compile our program and create a program which comprises a little bit of the strategy in Entromancy Hacker Battles, because I have to decide how to place these cards in a particular order that it's going to help me and hopefully do some damage to my opponent. And this is how I go about that. I'm going to play cards one by one from left to right on my side, kind of like this. I start with one card here on the left side of my board, and then my opponent is going to do the same by playing one card on their side of the board like this. And then I play my next card. I'm just doing them at random right now, not with any strategy. And then my opponent is going to play their next card, so on and so forth until I have filled the board, because I started first, and then they finish with their 5th card. So our compile step or compile phase is going to look like this at the end of it. I'm going to have 5 cards that are listed across the board, and they're going to have 5 cards listed across the board. And the order in which I do this is very important, because I'm playing these cards into what are called sockets. I know you can't really see anything here, but conceptually, when I play the first card, I'm playing it into the first socket. And then the opponent plays their card into the first socket. And then I play my card into the second socket, and then they play card into their second socket. 3rd, 4th, 5th, so on and so forth. I should say 3rd, 3rd, 4th, 4th, 5th, 5th, and pretty straightforward in that respect. The number of the socket that I play it in is going to come to bear with some of the cards or some of the functions that we have in Entromancy Hacker Battles, which we'll take a look at in just a second. I just wanted you to get the idea that I've drawn these cards in the initialize step, and now I'm compiling them by playing one card at a time, and then my opponent plays one card, and I play one progressively from left to right, and then progressively from left to right. And then we have the compile step complete, and I've created what we call a program, and they create a program, and then we're going to do stuff after that. Just want you to get that idea in your mind as we move to understanding how Entromancy Hacker Battles is played in practice. So there are a lot of different strategies about how to play Entromancy Hacker Battles, but one of them is simply deciding when I'm going to play a card and in which socket. For example, we saw this card, which is called Host. You might not be able to see it perfectly from here, but the description is gain a number of bit points equal to the number of the socket in which this function is played. So that's important. I start the game with 0 bit points, and so does my opponent. And neither of us can go below 0 bit points at any time. The lowest number of bit points that we can have is 0 bit points. But as you remember from the beginning of the video, our objective is to reach 10 bit points, or BP. You'll see that nomenclature as well. And so whosoever does this first is going to be the winner of this hacker battle. So it's going to behoove me to hold on to this card, which is called host, gain a number of bit points equal to the number of the socket in which this function is played, until the final compile step, the number 5 socket. Because if I play it in my first socket, then I will get 1 bit point. If I play it in the third one, I get 3, and so on until 5. So naturally, I want to save that until the end of the round. So that's a pretty basic strategy. That's what I'm going to hold on to right now. And so maybe I will start by playing ping, gain 2 bit points. All of your variables lose 1 bit point. So that's pretty smart. And I should note at this point that you gain bit points at the end of the round during the execute phase. So whatever happens right now during the compile phase, I'm not going to actually get any of this this action, this 2 bit points that comes on the ping card. I'm going to have to wait until the execute phase, which will come into play. My opponent, on the other hand, is going to play, let's say, handshake. Choose one of your opponent's functions that is in play. Exchange it with this function. So when my opponent plays this card, immediately they get to choose one of my functions that is in play and exchange it with this card. That's not great for me because I just played this thinking I would gain 2 bit points at the end of the round and all of my opponents would lose 1. But now they've switched it with me, and that's not ideal for me, but it's not the worst, because what if I had played host instead, this card that we looked at before? What if I had played it in the number 5 socket, and they played handshake and switched it with me there, and then they would get the benefits of that in their number 5 socket. Well, fortunately I've been able to stave that off, and that's not going to be a problem. So we're going to keep on going in this fashion. I'm going to play double, which means double the amount of bit points that you earn this round. And then my opponent is going to play a card called Boolean. Boolean, the description for it is, if there is another Boolean in play during the execute phase, lose 2 bit points. If there isn't, gain 4 bit points. So they're kind of exposing themselves by playing that, hoping that I don't play another Boolean, or presuming because they don't have another Boolean in their hands, they might be safe. Anyway, we're going to play our cards from left to right, and I kind of actually did that out of order. I should be playing one card, and then you play one card, and then I play one card, and you play one card. But I just want you to get the lay of the land before we get into more of the depth of the strategy of the game. And then once we do that, we've said to have completed the compile step, and we have our programs that are just chilling, waiting to be executed. So all of the stuff that happens on the card text, if I exchange one of my functions with yours, or if you deactivate one of my functions, or whatever happens, that all happens during the compile step. And then during the execute phase, we essentially execute our programs, and all of the BP or bit point accrual or depletion or multiplication is resolved. So I'll probably have a D10, a 10-sided die, or a piece of paper that I can keep track of my bit points, because I want to know when I've hit 10 bit points. And so I go through this process of adding up all of the bit points that I've accrued during this round. So for example, this one called double, it doubles the amount of bit points that I will accrue at the end of the round. So I'll put that aside. I'll take a look at host and determine what socket was it played in. Was it played in the 3rd or 4th socket? Meaning, is it worth 3 or 4 bit points? Firewall prevents one of your opponents from gaining or losing bit points this round. So that's basically going to negate anything that happens on this side of the board. We already talked about handshake, and then we'll talk about scrape in the next round. So I'll add up all my bit points, multiply them. I'll add up all my bit points. I'll subtract anything that came from my opponent's hand. So like this ping card that they stole from me, they actually subtract 1 bit point from my the bit points that I'm going to accrue for the round. So I'll have to take that into account. So let's say I accrued 5 bit points through my cards, and then you subtracted 1 from them. That'll be 4. And then I double them because I have this double card. Where is it? This double function, which allows me to double the amount of bit points that I get per round. And then so that will be 4 times 2. That's 8. I'm getting pretty close to winning. And then our opponents will do the same thing, although because I had this firewall card that negates any BP accrual or depletion on their side, they're not going to be able to do anything with it, so they're done. And then these get folded, these get put into our discard pile, and then eventually they'll get shuffled back into the deck, but we'll just say that doesn't need to happen right now. So we understand the objective of the game is to get 10 bit points before our opponent does. We understand that we initialize by drawing 5 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, face down, and our opponent does the same by drawing 5 cards. Remember, you can look at your cards, but your opponents cannot, because you've put together this deck for hacking into people's security devices, and only you know what they can do, and you are the master of determining what order they get placed into the function sockets during the compile step. After we've done the compile step, we do the execute step, which means we resolve all of our bit point accrual and see if any person has reached to 10. There's another piece of this that I'd like to kind of give you an idea about, is that on most of these cards, we'll also see a comment that there are a number of variables earned. Most cards, when you play them, you'll gain a number of variables, such as with Echo, we gain 1 variable. With float, the name of this function is called float. The comment says that, or the description says that you will gain a number of variables equal to the number of the socket in which this function is played. So if I play it in the number 2 socket, I will get 2 variables from it. If I play it in the number 5 socket, like if my cards were set up like this, then I would get 5 variables. Why is that important? Well, you can spend 5 variables at any time, and you might want to have another D10 or a piece of paper to help you remember how many variables you have. You can spend variables at any time to discard one of your cards and pull one out of the top of your deck. So that's pretty useful if you find yourself down a dark alley and you're not sure what to do. You could just use your spend your variables to do that. Or you can, if you have the correct number of variables, you can use your hacking specialization, which, as you'll recall, is something special that only you can do and no one else on the board can do. The one that's really easy to recall is Firestorm. This costs you 10 variables, and the description says that if you use it, you will prevent all hackers from gaining or losing bit points this round. This is like my abandoned ship. Things are not going well. I think my opponent is about to win the game. I'm going to prevent all of us and just level the playing field. Or let's say your opponent has this card, which or this hacking specialization, which is called Interrupt. This costs 8 variables, and the description reads: when an opponent plays a function, you can immediately require to discard that function and replace it with the one at the top of the deck. So that's pretty cool. That's a little bit of a control strategy, if you will. And remember, it costs you 8 variables to use this. So you might be saying, all right, so I have some control based on the cards that I place and the number of the socket in which I place them, or the order in which I place them. So let's just put this out so you can see the compile step once again. What other areas do I have for strategy in Entromancy hacker battles? Well, the types of cards that you play, particularly if you're playing with the advanced rules where you put together a deck yourself, is very important. So and when I play them is just as important. So like if I play Probe, this is the description of it is: reveal one function at random from one of your opponent's hands, gain 1 bit point. So remember, these cards, before they're placed on the opponent's side in the compile step, I can't see them. I don't know what they look like. I don't know what they have coming up. So I can use that card to determine, okay, do they have a host card that they're going to play soon that I'm going to try and want to use Turnkey? I'm sorry, not Turnkey, Handshake, the one that we looked at the previous round, where I can exchange my card for another card. Or do they have a Turnkey so that I can play this card? Turnkey, if another Turnkey is in play during the execute phase, gain 4 bit points. That means both of us will gain 4 bit points. So the cards themselves provide a strategic element to them. And when you want to gain variables, if you want to prevent someone from gaining variables, if you want to prevent someone from gaining bit points. And there's in addition to that, there's another strategic layer where once per round, at no cost, you or I or both of us can place a function face down to say that's an inactive function, and I don't want myself or you to be able to use it. So if let's say I see you put down a Boolean, which is that card that we saw that if I let me read you the exact text. If there's a I guess it was part of your hand, not mine. No matter, we'll find it. If there is another Boolean in play during the execute phase, lose 2 bit points. If there isn't, gain 4 bit points. That's a pretty strong, powerful card, although they're all equally powerful. But in this case, that means that if you placed a Boolean in one of these sockets, and I have one sitting in my hand, and I have to play it, let's say this were a Boolean, and I have to play it right at the in my 5th socket, then that would be problematic, because I might be doing it to my detriment, and I'm going to be subtracting 2 bit points from myself because there's another Boolean in play. That might be a valid strategy. I might want to do that, but let's say I don't. Let's say I'm willing for you to take those 4 bit points. I could place my Boolean face down, and then that card is inactive. There are other use case scenarios for it, and I should also mention that there is a card that allows you to actually change the card or the function from an inactive function into an active function, and so you can get the benefit of it. So there's like a counter tactic there, so the main compile phase, when that's finished and we've exchanged as many cards as the cards tell us to do, or we've spent variables to either draw a new card from the top of our decks or to play one of our hacking specializations, then we will we'll say we've completed the compile step, and then we're going to execute it by determining all bit point accrual or depletion and multiplication. Now, when all my cards have added up to 10 bit points or yours, let's say that we did them at the same time, we're going to continue playing until one of us has more bit points than the other. And remember, we can never go lower than 10 bit points, lower than 0 bit points, I should say. And if I have overcome your security protocols and gained 10 bit points before you have, then I'm considered to have won and hacked into your systems or your security turret or your security camera, whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And then we can play again. We can use different hacking specializations. We can bring other people to play with us. We can also use other objectives, of which there are 5 in total, and 5 hacking specializations. Another objective is to exchange functions with an opponent 4 times, or to execute 5 times. That's another one. So it depends on what objective you want to play. And in addition to these base decks, you may recall me mentioning that there are advanced hacking rules in which you can actually, rather than just taking the 30 cards that we've been playing with, you can instead create your own deck based on a smaller number of cards. And there are advanced hacking rules that allow you to if you're into deck building and you want to build a strategy, you can build your own deck. Your opponents can build their own decks, and then you can duke it out in hacker battles. Or let's say you pick your decks, you pick your specializations, and then each person gets an objective card, but I'm not going to show you what my objective card is, and you're not going to show me what your objective card is. Basically our objectives are different, and we're going to play them in secret. So all of a sudden we've executed 5 times, and I say, haha, I've won this hacker battle because we've executed 5 times, and you haven't won the hacker battle yet because you haven't exchanged functions with an opponent or me 4 times. So that's another layer of complexity that you can use if you want to. There are more advanced rules. I don't think we need to get into them for the sake of this video, but I will mention that there are hooks for you to play Entromancy hacker battles in coordinates with Entromancy, a cyberpunk fantasy RPG, instead of the hacking built-in hacking system that we have in Entromancy, a cyberpunk fantasy RPG. If you're familiar with D20 systems or 5th edition, you'll be intimately familiar with how skill checks work, and our hacking system in Entromancy, a cyberpunk fantasy RPG, is a bit different from other systems, but it is based on dice rolling. If you want to try something different, we're providing hooks so that you can play hacker battles with Entromancy, a cyberpunk fantasy RPG, and we're also working on hooks so that it will fit in with other cyberpunk or sci-fi or urban fantasy role-playing games that involve some sort of hacking. So that's the basics of how to play Entromancy hacker battles. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment on this video or head to our Kickstarter page or to our website and leave a comment. And you can also email us at info@entromancy.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at facebook.com/entromancy or twitter.com/entromancy. We also have a Discord server that you can find by pretty much anywhere. Just check out the link in the YouTube comments, in the YouTube description, or go to our website or follow our social channels. You can get the link from there. And we hope to see you playing Entromancy Hacker Battle soon. Thanks for watching.